Okay, welcome everyone. Perfect timing. Christine, can you just give us a nod that you can hear us? Oh, okay, a wave, nod, yep, same thing. Welcome everyone to our MyNet education session today. I'm Orvie Dingwall. We have Christine Nielsen live from Manitoba Health. And we have our guest presenter today, Grace Romund. So I'm going to do a brief introduction and then Grace is going to take over. So Grace is a former health sciences librarian. She worked in a number of different roles in long-term care here at the Neil John McLean Health Sciences Library. And now she is the science liaison out of the Science Library at the University of Manitoba. Her specialty liaison areas are environment and geography. And sort of a great segue between health and environment and geography has been maps. And so you may have caught her in our fall session where you were talking just kind of a little bit about using data to create maps in healthcare. Today, we're actually going to do some demos. And with that very brief introduction, I'll turn it right over to you. And I'm going to close these blinds so that we're not having a glare.
Well, hi everyone. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get started here. As Orvie mentioned, my name is Grace Romund, and I'm a librarian who's done some work in maps and with some GIS and GIS data. So today I'm going to specifically talk about creating maps for healthcare. My objective, and there's only one because it's a pretty complex topic, is that hopefully at the end we'll be familiar with some possible data sources, some methods, as well as the tools to create maps to geographically represent health data, and then give you some ideas as to how you might use data in GIS to represent what might be going on in your region or some health-related topic. To get there, we're going to do a whole bunch of things. First, I'm going to talk about getting the health data. So this could be a couple of things. It could include you generating data if you're someone who does research or collects data, health data in some way. And you could also get it from some different health data sources, such as Statistics Canada. The example we're going to use today is CIHI. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things you should think about relating to that. Then we're going to talk about getting the geographic data, which is the second step. So first you get the health data, which won't be geography based. It'll probably be tabular data, so in some Excel spreadsheets. Then you're going to go get some geography sources, so some geographic data. I'm going to give you some source recommendations for that, the formats that you'll probably want. Then you have to put those two component parts into a GIS software program. Today I'm going to demo QGIS. I'm going to talk a little bit about Esri right at the end, related to some products that are now available in Manitoba, throughout Manitoba Health, related to those. Sorry, it says for suing, it's for using open source advantages and limitations. And then also we're going to visualize an example map. That's kind of a lofty goal for the time that we have. I'm going to go through as much as possible. It's probably going to go a little quickly once we get to the demo itself. But primarily, like all those parts, once we get to the actual demoing, I can provide some documentation afterwards if you really want to try exactly step by step what we went through. You won't be able to do it with me unless you already have QGIS downloaded. But I will give you all the ways that you can go get that as well. So I'm going to jump right into getting some health data. I went to CIHI and I thought what could be a good example, and what I decided to pick was benchmarks for treatment and wait time across Canada. And then I picked one of their variables, which was cataract surgery, for us to demo today. Now, this might be a good time to talk about privacy. Obviously, with health data, there are numerous privacy concerns, not only with collecting it that you may or will be very familiar with, but then also putting it into specific software programs and making sure that you know what is kind of the policies behind those software programs and whether or not where the data in those software programs will live. So a lot of the data that you can go out and locate will be very high level. So this is all across provinces. And especially once you get to maybe like epidemiological studies or something about instances that once you get down to like smaller geographic areas, especially in places that aren't populated, if you have, I've heard people use examples of wanting to use maybe postal code regions, but if you've only got one or two instances of people having a particular disease or condition within a postal code region, obviously that data kind of loses its privacy. And so a lot of the data that you'll see available through sources like Statistics Canada or Chi-Hi is going to be kind of at the provincial level, and just as a reminder to think yourself about the ways that if you're collecting data that you want to geographically plot, to really think about privacy as you do that. So I went here and I chose my variables and I exported the data, and what I ended up with was a Excel spreadsheet that had a whole bunch of data points and a whole bunch of information, but what I kind of stripped it down to the very bare basics. So, and I scrubbed it to make it something that would be accepted into the GIS software program. So what that entailed was basically trying to have something in every field. So when I got the data from Chi-Hi, for example, for the data year, there was just a merged cell with 2018 for the whole, all the provinces, and it had Canada with null, it had Canada, so it had the sum totals of the volume, but we're not going to geographically plot Canada as a whole. We're going to plot the provinces individually. So I made sure that I duplicated the 2018 in each field in that column. I'll note here that like this can be one of the most time-consuming parts of GIS data map creation, making sure that the data that you're putting into the program is in the format that it wants. It can be a time-consuming process, especially if you're downloading it from somewhere like Chi-Hi that has it in a specific format already when you download it. So that's the first part. And the next part was I needed something to plot that health data onto. And where I went to was Statistics Canada. So as part of census, they reissue boundary files. So they're the most recent boundary files for specific geographical regions as designated by the Government of Canada. So these are 2016 files. And I can provide the links for all of this later as well if you would like. So as you can see here, there's a bunch of different formats that you can download. The first one is ArcGIS, and it's SHP file, commonly known as a shape file. That's the type of file that you can most commonly use for this. And there's a whole bunch of options as to what you could download and the different ways that Canada is broken up for the census. So the top one is provinces and territories. So I selected cartographic boundary file. There is a difference between cartographic and digital boundary files. For this type of map creation, I'm always going to recommend you use cartographic. Basically, what it means is that it's the best display for a 2D map that you're going to print or disseminate in some way.
Grace, I have a question.
Yes.
Interjects Orvie. I am not familiar with the term boundary file.
So boundary, it basically just denotes the boundary of a region.
Okay, like a physical
Yes.
area? Okay.
Yes. So when you look at a map of Canada and there are the lines in between each province, that's basically all what we're downloading here is going to give us. It's just going to be the boundaries of the regions. It's not going to tell you anything about inside of it other than its name, but it's just going to give you the outline boundaries of the places. And that's all we need because we have the data about inside of it that we are going to attach to it, the health data that we want to tell the story about what's going on in that province, about cataract surgery wait times.
Thank you.
I downloaded this file. What happens when you download the file is that it will come in as a zip file. You can see it here, and then I unzipped it. And you'll see here that it looks like a bunch of nothing that you could look at, and it really isn't anything that you can navigate, well, other than there's a PDF file, so you could open this and it'll tell you a little bit about what you've just downloaded. It's your reference guide, so it'll tell you all the information about what is a boundary file, et cetera, et cetera. But for right now, all you need to know is that there's no point in really going into here to navigate these files in Windows Explorer. You need to download the software programs that can open them as one thing. So it takes 5 component parts to turn into one thing that will visualize in a specific software program. But just unzip the file, make it live somewhere, and that's all you need to know for now.
And then don't touch it.
And don't touch it. Yes, then you'll wreck it if you touch it. That is, I think I just want to double check all I want to say about the geographic data. Yeah, so the format, it's got to be in a shapefile because we're going to put it into a GIS software program called QGIS. That is this program right here. So in the last session that I talked about, that Orvie mentioned, where I came and talked, I had mentioned that there's a whole bunch of different options. 2 of them, ArcGIS, and which was what you saw in that boundary file list of file formats, and then this one that you'll see on your screen here now, QGIS, are 2 software programs that use the same file formats to input into.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, Christine.
This is Christine. Can you repeat what you were just saying? It kind of cut out a little bit there.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I'm just talking about the different programs that you can use.
Just click on QGIS.
Yeah. The different programs that you can use to manipulate this data, to view it, to analyze it. There's 2 of them that use the same file formats. The first one was ArcGIS, and they are the ones that came up with the files and the file structures. So that's when we were over on this website, when it says what's the option, it says ArcGIS and it's a shapefile. Shapefile is the common terminology used for these file types, and they can also be used in this software program called QGIS. QGIS is really easy to find. If you are interested in downloading it, I would Google QGIS download, and it'll be the first hit. QGIS is open source software. If you have ever had any experience with open source software, there are advantages and disadvantages to its use. And one of them is that it's free and you can download it and you could try what I'm going to be demonstrating today. But some disadvantages are that it can be a little bit glitchier, not necessarily this iteration because it's a fairly stable release. They release updates all the time. But one thing that is a little different with it is that component parts of things that you can do with it. So plugins, which is the same way that we would use a plugin in a web browser where you might have a different plugin for something. Those are developed by like people who are part of the QGIS community. They're not necessarily employed by a company called QGIS. It's a part of a collective of people creating and using software that has been created collectively and used freely by everyone. There is a vetting process that you can see who has created what so that you know, okay, this is used by a whole bunch of people and it has been tagged as something that, you know, is of high quality by QGIS. But what it means is that when the new release comes out, you don't always have all the plugins. So for example, I'm working on a map right now that I have uploaded into a web format, so it's a web navigatable map for end use. And the plugin to turn it into a web map in an interactive way was on a previous release of QGIS, but it's not on this one that's on my screen right now. So I have to wait till someone creates that, and then I can upload it into the new iteration. So just a note about that, and there are some advantages, and that's maybe one of the disadvantages. So I'm going to kind of take you on a little bit of a tour around what we're looking at right now to kind of get you familiar with the software. It is a little bit of a steep learning curve in terms of how you navigate things and what you navigate, and there's a bit of terminology, but once you're familiar with this basic terminology, if you, for example, were then going to go use ArcGIS, you could fairly easily transpose these ideas.
I'm just going to jump in real quick.
I see your question here now, sorry, is about does QGIS have all the same functionality as ArcGIS? Yes and no. So ArcGIS is a big package that comes as one thing. You take it out of the box and it's got everything you might want to use in it. QGIS is the opposite. It has just the basic comes out of the box, and if you want to do any extra things with it, then you have to download those plugins as an addition and an addition and an addition. What that means is that actually QGIS runs a little bit faster on your computer because it isn't the whole big package out of the box on your computer, and these programs are like big RAM guzzlers, and like they take up a lot of space on your computer. And if you have a better video card, that can be pretty helpful too, because it takes a while for the images to render when you're working with large data sets. It's all going to hopefully go pretty quickly today because they're fairly small data sets, but once you get bigger, it could be a lot.
And I will just mention that your fall session, we did a recording of that, and that's available on our website. So Grace does go through more similarities and differences and stuff. So we do have that available to everyone to view. You can just go to mynet.ca, and it's on the left-hand side, and people can watch that.
Yeah, and I recommend that if you're kind of trying to decide which program to use. Like I say, the file structures are interchangeable, so you can be looking at it. If you have a colleague that's looking at a map in ArcGIS and you want to use QGIS, you can do that with the component parts to create a map, not the finished map product. But I would recommend that like you pick a tool and kind of go through that process of making a decision about what tool you want to use and then go for it, would be my recommendation. Yeah, so in terms of the way that it looks, in that way, functionality-wise, they are very similar. Like if you've ever opened up ArcGIS, you'll kind of see something similar. So when you launch the program, unlike a lot of software programs nowadays, and this is the reason why I launched ours now before the session started, is that it can take quite a while to open. So don't be alarmed, nothing is wrong. These programs take a long time to open because they are very large. And then kind of don't bug it while it's trying to open. And then once it opens, it'll look like this. This is a blank map project. Oops. So anyway, this is what's called the data frame. So this big white space here, this is the data frame. This is the frame through which we will view, analyze, and manipulate the data. Down here on the left-hand side, you'll see this window called layers. So this will tell you what all the component parts that you're looking at, what they are and what they'll do. I'll note here, I'm just going to throw one in here now so that you can see. So up here is your browser. This is you looking into your file structures on your computer. So if you'll remember before we were looking at in Windows Explorer and we opened up that folder and there was 5 or 6 different things. Now you can see there's the PDF that we had looked at before, but then there's just one file when you look at it through the browser in QGIS. That's because it has taken all those parts and those weird files in the Windows Explorer part and put them together to something that we can use. So you drag and drop it into layers, and then it'll show us the map of Canada and all the provinces and the territories.
And I don't know about people on the line because we have them muted, but I was just doing a gasp. Like that was so neat. How you just took gobbledygook files and then all of a sudden they make this beautiful map.
Right, and this is like completely free too. This is the thing. I just downloaded this from online. I downloaded the software and then I created this. So to show you around the rest of it, it was better to have something in the data frame. Some things that can be a little bit, right now we're on the pan map tool, so it means that when I pull this around, and you can see how it takes a while once I move it for the image to reappear. It's because that rendering takes a while. There's zoom in. And zooming is really different than in other programs. So zooming happens by you draw a box around what you want to zoom into, and it will zoom closer. And the same thing, if you want to zoom out, you draw a box. The other thing that can be kind of useful too is this little eye. So it's an identify feature. Hopefully we're fairly familiar with what this one in the middle is, but if you click on it and you didn't know, oops, sorry, I clicked on 2 by accident. If you clicked on it and you didn't know what it was, it'll show you, it'll list what it is. Oh, that's Ontario. And it tells you all the parts about it that are located in the attribute table, which I will show you next. But that little eye, if you don't know what you're looking at, you can click on the different features and it will tell you what they are. So that's British Columbia. And that can be pretty helpful. So the other thing that you can do is, so this is, you can make things appear or not appear. So if you click on it, it will disappear and reappear. And something that can be pretty useful, and we'll get into it once we start kind of connecting the health data to it, is you'll want to know what's going on in the attribute table. So I'm going to open up the attribute table, and basically what this is all of the information that's tabular data related to the geographic data that was imported from the Government of Canada or the Statistics Canada website. I'll note here that the way that, so it gives us the province name, and it also gives it in English and in French, and it gives us the abbreviation and also the French abbreviation. This province English abbreviation, I actually edited it already. So I clicked on that little edit guy, and I changed each one of these so that they were identical to the Excel spreadsheet province file that I showed you already. So it has to be, everything has to be the same. It has to be same for it to work. So whatever the geographic point that you're going to connect it to, if you're going to connect it to, so what we're going to do is we're going to connect this table to the tabular data table, and by joining them together, then we're going to make one big table that has all the information about the cataract wait times and all of this data, and it'll be on one big table.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I definitely understand your data points have to match, or
Mm-hmm.
else they're not going to talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
But could you have edited instead your Excel file?
Yes.
Okay, so just as long as they match, it doesn't matter which one you edit?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as they match, it doesn't matter which one you edit. The reason why I edited this one in here instead of the Excel spreadsheet file is that you can kind of already tell from the French abbreviation that the abbreviations here were a little bit, in this file, were a little bit longer, not our typical, like there was no periods in between the B and the C and those kinds of things. So I just thought that these abbreviations were a little bit easier. Easier to keep more standard if they're less complicated. So that's the attributes table. It can be really useful, especially if you're working with larger data sets. Obviously, there's only 13 data points here, so that's pretty easy. But you can highlight something here and select it. And then once you've selected it, then it will, select features using, select, you can select it here. And then when you close it, you'll see that it's Northwest Territories that's selected because I had that selected in the attribute table. And that can be really helpful if you're working with like 100 data sets in a really small area and you're trying to find one. You can find it in the tabular data and select it. And then when you open it up in the geographic one, then it's highlighted bright yellow or whatever the color is. The other thing I'll note here too is that all of the colors here are completely arbitrary. If we close this program out, actually I'll do that. So really easy to remove something. If you make a mistake, you just remove the layer and say, yeah, I don't want that anymore. And if you put it back there, now it's a different color. So it always comes in as a different color. If you want it as a particular color, I'm going to show you how to change the colors in a minute. Okay, so I just want to get rid of this and we're ready to go. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to grab this Excel file that I showed you already, cataract wait times, and I'm going to drag it into here. I'm going to note here, if these were both geographic files, so one has no geography because it's just tabular data, so it can't display anyway, but we're going to attach it so that it will display. But if you have two separate things that both are able to display geographically, whichever one is at the top of your list, that's the one that's going to be on the top and down from there. So and you can make them transparent and that kind of thing too. But if you just want, for example, usually if we were going to put this one as the Canada, and then you might have another layer that was like the health regions of Manitoba, you might want to put that one on top because you just have the background is the provinces and then something like that. So next, to connect these two things, we're going to use some geoprocessing tools. So as I mentioned about the plugins, to do kind of fancier things in QGIS, you're going to need to download some plugins, but to do what we're going to do today, it's already inherently in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and open this in here to make sure everything is the way that I want it. So as you can see, that province column, and so there's a province column in the cataract wait times spreadsheet, and there's also a province column in the attribute table for the provinces, and they're all kind of samesies. And so when we connect them together, in theory, they will be connected and it'll make one big table. To do that, we're going to use a processing tool in the toolbox. You can click on the toolbox and it will appear on the right hand side. As you can see, like I kind of was lying a little bit when I said that you have to download the plugins for everything. There's quite a few tools in here, but not as many as the things that it's capable of doing.
Right, but it sounds like, and it looks like, if we just were looking to try it out a little bit, we could definitely just start with a basic download, a basic data set, and just goof around a little bit. And then that probably would also be the way that we would find out what plugins we would need, right? If I decided I wanted to do something and it didn't have, like, that's the learning curve, right?
That's right. And if it's all dependent on what you want the software to do for you and what kind of maps you want to create. If you want a map that's going to be used by consumers in your health region and you want to put it up on a website, then you'll need some different things. And if you just want something that's going to go into a report for something, then that's a different set of needs. So definitely knowing what you want to accomplish before you approach the software will help you kind of figure out what software you need. I talked about in that session that I came and talked last time about the difference between vector and raster data and how those two things are different. They're different, and all you need to know is that they are two different things. And so I just know that this is vector data. And if you want more detail beyond that, please listen to that talk. Yeah. So what we're going to do, so there's these things called join. Like, it's fairly simple terminology, which I love. So basically what we want to do is we want to join these two things together, the two different files that we've got, with common attributes to create one thing. So we're going to join them together and make them one thing. We're not going to join them by location because we kind of know that cataract wait times isn't expressed geographically right now. We know it has kind of that field that tells us stuff about geography, but the program's not smart enough to know that. So what we have to join it by is a field value, that column that it has in common. All the geoprocessing tools, once you open them up like this, they're going to do this. And they're going to, in a very helpful way, if you read this, it's going to tell you exactly what's going to happen. So this algorithm is going to take an input vector layer, and it's going to create a new vector layer that is an extended version of the one that you start with additional attributes in its attribute table. So the one that is an actual layer, something that's geographically expressed right now, is that provinces layer. And actually, before I do this, I'm going to name it something else so that it's easier for you guys to understand what's going on.
Yeah, it was there.
It was there,
yeah.
And then oh yeah, it's okay. I can do it here. So now we've got the provinces, and the field that we want is that abbreviation, the English abbreviation, and we're going to join it with the cataract wait times and the province. So I did that pretty quickly, but basically I picked the two different ones, the two different layers, or two different files.
And if I can just summarize, you're basically saying, okay, map, talk to Excel spreadsheet and join together.
Yes.
That's what we're doing.
Yes.
And I'm holding my breath because I am so excited for this moment.
Yeah, because it's gonna work. I'm just gonna it's gonna work. So what I'm gonna tell it to do is to discard the ones that can't be joined, because I know, and you guys might know if you're looking at the data, that there is no territories data in the cataract file. Yeah. So there's going to be some stragglers there, because there's going to be 10 things that it can join with, and there's going to be 3 things that it can't. So this is, if you know anything about database design or databases, this is creating a one-to-many or a one-to-one relationship. I think for this case, we can just go one-to-one because we're only dealing with 1 year. If you were dealing with multi-year data, you might want the province of Alberta to be able to repeat lots of times, and then you'd need one-to-many so that you could have the same province repeat for a bunch of different periods.
Would it also be the same, like if we were doing a map of people who had been vaccinated, each vaccine would be a different?
Yes. So you could do it a bunch of different ways. You could do, I would almost say what you might want to do if you had a bunch of different vaccines, because there are not a bunch of different places that could all be located. You would want a different layer for each vaccine. So whatever variable you have, kind of, okay, we're going to try this. It's going to work. It's going to be great. See this? This is exactly what I hoped was going to happen. So
You're such a tease, Grace. You're such a tease. You showed us an error message.
No, this is great. So as I said, because I'm new, 10 provinces. So the 10 fields that we had in the cataract wait times Excel spreadsheet would join with the 10 provinces, but we knew that there wasn't any Chi-Hi data for the 3 territories. So it says 3 of the features from the input layer could not be matched, and I told it to get rid of those because we're not going to use them. So now my map looks different. What it looks like is I can more easily demonstrate what I talked about before, is that the thing that goes on top is what's going to be seen first. So when I put the one that we started with, the provinces layer, if that's the first thing at the top of the list of things that can be geographically displayed, then that's what's going to be on top. Then if I put the joined layer on top, that one that we created, then it's on top, and then anything where there's space, it'll show whatever's behind it. So now if I open up this attribute table, I will see everything from those 2 fields. So I've got the names of the places, and these are that abbreviation was the one that and then I've got also the stuff about meeting benchmarks. So percentage of meeting benchmarks. Well, that's very interesting, but I only see that if I open up the attribute table. I want to see that geographically. Before I do that, I'm just going to make this this is a purple monster kind of colors going on here. So I'm going to change the colors of this one first by going into provinces properties. And there's a whole bunch of things on the left-hand side and things that you can do. One is symbology. Symbology is the word for changing the color of things or symbolizing it in a different way. I just want it to be lighter because it's a background thing now, right? So I just kind of want that to be something a little bit different. So that's a little bit better. So then now on this joined layer, I'm going to go to properties. And instead of it all being the same color, I want the colors to tell us something about that meeting the benchmark. So there's that one column that talks about percentage towards meeting the benchmark. So if you're 100% of meeting the benchmark versus 0, and I want that to be displayed in a geographical way. To do that, I'm going to change it from a single symbol for each of those places to a graduated symbol. So I'm going to click graduated, and then it gives us these color ramps. And there's a whole bunch of different options. So you can do a color ramp of different colors and that kind of thing. This is where I'm going to kind of make a disclaimer, which is very, very easy argument to make to people in health sciences, because you guys know that when you are producing anything, research, or in this case, a visualization of data, you as the researcher or the cartographer in this case can put in a lot of bias into what you're displaying. If you, for example, for color 1 chose green and color 2 was red, then like the way that human minds work, we're conditioned to think, well, green is good and red is bad, or white is not a lot of concentration of something and darker is a lot of concentration of something, and that's what we expect. So just to be mindful, if you're curious about biases in maps, I highly recommend the book How to Lie with Maps. It's from the 90s, so doesn't talk a lot about the technology that we're talking about today, but it is the go-to book about kind of how the cartographer can put in some biases by the way that you display something. So just to be mindful of that. So I'm going to change the color from red to hot pink, because that's what I want. And then I'm going to classify, I have to pick which column I want to display. So I want that percentage of meeting the benchmark. So you could also display the 50th percentile in days or the 90th percentile in days. Those are the other few things, or the volume, the number of cataract surgeries happening. But I want the meeting the benchmark one. And then I click classify. And then, so it kind of makes some assumptions and does some things for us automatically. It chooses values and ranges based on what is in that attribute table that we had. Again, this is a very small data set, so the range isn't very big. Over here, you can see classes. So if we want more than 5 colors to display, we've got 10 provinces. We can do that, or we can do less, or we can do more. You can also choose how those numbers are broken up. You can have at equal interval, natural breaks. So if there's a lot that are a certain number, et cetera, et cetera. The possibilities are endless. So apply. Okay. So what you can tell, unfortunately, I picked an example, and I promise I didn't do this to begin with. I picked an example where Manitoba comes out not looking really great. So we're in the 29% of meeting the benchmark for cataract surgery wait times. And then you can see, so there's a color gradient there as expressed in this example. I'm going to show you a couple more things, but I'm going to maybe open it up to questions, and I might just kind of do the things and show you the things while maybe you start thinking about some questions. So if you have questions,
I will ask the first question,
perfect.
please, which is, now that you have this, how do you get it out of here? Like into your Word document or into your PowerPoint?
Exactly. So that was kind of where we were going.
Okay.
So you have some options. You can just directly export.
Is it like file export?
Yeah, it's project import export, and you can export map to PDF, and it'll look exactly like that. Unfortunately, that is not, if you were if that's fine enough for you and you're going to export it to a JPEG or import export, you can export it to a JPEG, and then you yourself in your Word doc where you're writing some report, you're going to put the caption on it and you don't need it to tell you anything else in the map image itself, that's fine. The other thing you might want to do is up here. So as I mentioned before, this is the data frame. So this frame is just for manipulating the data itself. Once you want to make it pretty and something that you could use, you can create a print layout, and we'll call it cataract wait times. And it's going to create this other window, and you can add a map, and we're going to make it like that, and it's going to take a second to render it, and what it's going to put there is our map. And to look at it properly, I just need to center this, and then it'll center it properly over here, or it's supposed to. And then what you can also, you can add a label. So up here, if you want to put in the title, and you can put in a title, and then you can also put in a legend. So if you want someone to understand what the different parts are, and you can manipulate that, and say you also want to add a scale bar. Scale bars are usually pretty useful. This is a very ugly map, guys, I'm sorry. I just need this guy to be the right size. I'll get him there while we're talking. But yeah, so that's how you would, and then once you could export that as a PDF or export that as an image, and it would be more complete. I don't totally have enough time to kind of go into the details of making something super pretty.
But
this is how you would do it. Yeah.
Now I see we've got a question.
Oh, and I have them all. I don't know how I did this.
So can you also show how to add a layer where the actual percentage is?
Oh, here we go. Sorry, where the actual percentages.
Oh, but there was more and then you closed it on me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see.
Click on this one.
Click on this one? No. Click on this one? Questions?
Yeah.
No. Oh, it's up here.
Mm-hmm. Is displayed on each province.
Oh, yes. Yes, you can. So what I'll say about that is this part here is only for once you've displayed all the things you want to display. So forget about this for right now. You have to make your changes to the symbology and how you want things to appear on this map, not the once you're ready to kind of make it pretty to export it and add things to it. So properties, and then labels, and then you can choose what you want the label to say. So I want single labels, and I want to label with the percentage of meeting the benchmark, and apply and say okay. And it's going to take a second to do this because I did it before and it takes a minute. But once it does it, then you'll see the number on the screen. One of them, yeah, and it's Saskatchewan. In the actual table, it had all of those extra points after the decimal point. So you would have to change that in your attribute table for it not to look like that. It's a very common like, you know, garbage in, garbage out. So whatever you put into your attribute table is going to be the building blocks into how you can or cannot make something look pretty. And as you can see over here, because in the Maritimes, the provinces are a little bit smaller. So if you were going to talk about a smaller area like that, you might want to just zoom in on that area, and then the labels will kind of, and you can change things to make it bigger or smaller. So at this point, it says it's a percentage of the size of what's on the screen. But yeah. Can you show how to add a layer where the, I think I might have answered that one.
Yeah.
Accessing the data. You mentioned that you're accessing ChiHi and StatsCan. How easy is it for us to access data from these areas? Is there a quick reference document on how to do it? No, not that I know of. Like each of those places will have kind of instructional documentation about how to download data from their websites, but not necessarily how to then kind of scrub that data to make it able to be input into these programs. So so that's what I would say. There's no great way, and everything that you download from each one is going to be a little bit different in terms of its format. Oh yeah, it's all free. Sorry, yes, I didn't get that part. Yeah, it like Hi StatsCan, WHO has a lot of data too. If you were looking at more worldwide kind of data, it's all freely available. You can access it directly as long as you know what you're trying to download. For Canada-wide data, especially like census data, for example, if you were looking at like age ranges of people living in Lorette, Manitoba, and you were kind of trying to figure out age demographics, that data might be really big if you were doing that on a Canada-wide scale, and then you might need some extra software for looking at that kind of data before you could put it in GIS software. So Excel can only handle up to 1,000 columns. That's it. And there's a lot of, and I know that sounds like a lot, but it's really not when you're dealing with StatsCan data. So then there's another program called Beyond 2020, also free to download, and you can download it directly from StatsCan, and that's how you can use that. So that's the answer to that one. So the labels don't. They
can't see these questions. You have to read them.
Yeah. So can you move the labels, or do you just have to zoom in? You can kind of move them in the sense that, like, the same way that on like a Word doc you can say like left justified or right justified. You can kind of move them around that way, but you can't just like kind of drag and drop them where you want them. The only way to do that would be at that second stage where you can create specific labels and you could number them yourself if you wanted to like have more control over how they were being displayed. But for it to do it automatically, they will appear kind of to a certain extent where they will appear, but you can dictate how big they are. Where can we find shapefiles for more local geographies like Manitoba RHAs or districts? Very good question. Manitoba government has, City of Winnipeg has an open data portal for Winnipeg stuff. Manitoba, not quite as easy. There is the Manitoba Land Initiative, but Manitoba Land Initiative doesn't have as much that you could find kind of the basic stuff, I think, in terms of breakup of location. I'm pretty sure from the StatsCan website, though, you can get region, like the different health regions and stuff. So you can still get that at a federal level, even though it's provincial jurisdiction. And
Kai too, I'm sure.
Kai doesn't have any, to my knowledge, Kai doesn't have any of the actual like boundary files.
Okay.
They just have the raw data in tabular format that you can put into those. But that's the hard part, like, is trying to find them, the things that you can plug your own data into. So I offer myself up fully. If you have any questions, I'm gonna throw my email address up on the screen now.
And we always circulate. Yeah, because there's a few things you've mentioned that we can circulate. So we'll send those to everyone who registered for today's session.
Right.
So we'll definitely connect everyone directly with Grace.
And so as you might not be able to tell, but my computer has a bit of a lag now because it's trying to do a lot of things. So
And they might see this now.
they might see this now.
There we go.
Yeah. Are there any more questions? I think we could probably take one or two more.
Yeah, and maybe as people are entering those, did you want to mention about?
Oh, yes. So there was an email that went out yesterday,
I think today or yesterday.
that within Manitoba, they are getting a
No, at Manitoba Health.
Manitoba Health.
Yeah.
Manitoba Health is getting a province-wide, and what they said in the press release or their email send out was that they're getting a province-wide Esri subscription. There's a little bit of a misnomer. Esri is the name of the company, but the product that you would be able to use with that subscription is ArcGIS. So I would be happy to come back and show you ArcGIS. But
So, Grace.
yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I think it's not province-wide, but it's for the Manitoba government employees.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, not province-wide. I think they said province-wide in the email, and I think that's why I was thinking, but they meant province-wide for those employees. Yeah. But as I said, it's kind of the same functionality as QGIS, just a little bit different, and the buttons are a little bit different. So if you want to use that tool, it's very similar. So you can use a lot of the things I talked about today. But if not, you can also just use QGIS or and it's a lot of the same. So I can definitely provide support about that too. Also they have an upcoming workshop about ArcGIS. Christine, do you remember what day that was?
It was next week. I'm just looking for the email right now. It was the message from the clerk of executive council. Someone's asked for it. I'm going to forward it on to them right now.
Yeah. And they're also going to provide an ArcGIS tutorial. So again, if you've attended this one and then you go to that one, then you'll already be a leg up, because I figure a lot of it will probably be repetitive.
Because the concepts are the same, right? Like about matching your data sources and having your fields be similar, and at what stage you need to match or do the data. And you already have to have a lot of thought already into what colors are you using, what symbology, what kind of labels, all that kind of stuff. But some of the buttons will be different, right?
That's right. And all the terminology, like layers is the same, and symbology is the same word, and data frame, it's all, and the zoom in, zoom out, it's the same thing. Like, yeah, you'll see a lot of common threads. Anyway, I don't think I see any more questions. One last call if there's any more questions. Well, thank you so much to Orby and Christine for the opportunity to come and talk to you guys about GIS, and I hope that it was useful. And although we kind of went in a breakneck pace, I'm glad that hope maybe you got something out of it. And if you have any more questions, please be in touch.
Well, and Grace, we sincerely thank you, because the pleasure is really all ours. I know last time I felt like it was a little bit of a teaser because it was quite conceptual, talking about the different programs that are available and the different things you could do. And I know I just wanted to see, like, for real, when you took 2 data files and then they turned into a map that had meaningful colors and symbology and plots and everything. So that was so exciting to see live and in person today. So thank you so much. And we will be circulating Grace's contact, and Christine and I are also available to, we are not experts on this kind of thing, but you know, we can help do
do lots of things. So whatever you need help with, we'd be happy to help you.
Sorry, we just had someone at the door and I forgot to leave our sticky note saying, please do not interrupt us. So with that, we'll end. We'll circulate our contact info, and you'll know how to connect us. And thank you to everyone who joined today and who participated and asked questions.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for coming.
You want to just